Hello students, today we'll be studying about same chapter human reproduction, and this today will be a last session. So last class you have studied about menstrual cycle. So today let us see the fertilization. Fertilization or fusion of gametes is the most vital event in the process of sexual reproduction as it results in the new life. In humans, while the male gamete or sperm is motile, the female gamete or the ovum is non-motile. Therefore, for fertilization to occur, the two gametes must be brought together. This is achieved through insemination, where the penis releases semen filled with thousands of sperms into the vagina. Interestingly, while half of the total sperms released carry the X chromosome, the other half contain the Y chromosome. The sperms then repeatedly move towards the cervix through the uterus and finally reach the ampullary ischemic junction of the fallopian tube. In the meantime, the ovum, after completing the first meiotic division, gets released into the fallopian tube with the rupture of the Graafian follicle. Upon its release, the ovum begins to undergo the second meiotic division. However, the division does not go beyond the first phase. Interestingly, the ovum containing only X chromosome, studies have shown that the ovum is filled with the cytoplasm called the yolk or by the thallus, surrounded by a membrane called the white line membrane. The white line membrane is ensconced in another membrane called the zona pellucida. However, there is some space between zona pellucida and the white line membrane, which is called the perivitine line space. Surrounding the zona pellucida is a layer of granulous cells called the cells of corona radiata. The ovum present in the fallopian tube now starts drifting towards the uterus. Once it reaches the ambulatory ischemic junction, the ovum gets bombarded by several thousands of sperms. However, only one sperm penetrates the zona pellucida and initiates the fertilization process. Moreover, this penetrating sperm induces the zona pellucida to stiffen, which prevents other sperms from entering the ovum. After gaining entry through zona pellucida, the acrosome present over the sperm nucleus starts secreting enzymes that aids the sperm head to get through the ovum cytoplasm, while the sperm sheds its tail. The fertilized egg now resumes the remaining phases of the second meiotic division. However, this division being unequal results in the formation of two unequal bodies, a haploid ovum called oocyte and a second polar body. When the second polar body degenerates, the oocyte and the haploid nucleus of the sperm fuse together to form a diploid zygote. The sex of the zygote is decided at the time of the fertilization. If the ovum is fertilized by a sperm containing X chromosome, the resulting zygote contains XX chromosome and it will develop into a female. Whereas, if a sperm containing the Y chromosome fertilizes the ovum, the resultant XY chromosome zygote develops into a male. Thus, it is a sperm that decides the sex of the fetus. A little more than a day after its formation, the zygote starts moving down the fallopian tube. Simultaneously, the zygote also undergoes mitotic division, and with each successive division, the number of daughter cells doubles. This division is termed as cleavage. while the resultant daughter cells are called blastomeres. About 3 days after fertilization, the zygote contains nearly 8 to 16 cells and is called morula. Over a period of 2 days, the morula descends down into the uterus and transforms itself into a blastocyst, a hollow ball composed of about 100 blastomeres, which are arranged in 2 layers. The outer layer, called the trophoblast, eventually gives rise to the placenta, while the inner layer, consisting of a group of cells called the inner cell mass, eventually differentiates to form the embryo. Interestingly, at the blastocyst stage, the zygote, now called the embryo, gets attached to the uterus as the trophoblast grows outwards and penetrates the endometrial lining of the uterus. In response, the endometrial cells divide and start surrounding the blastocyst. This causes the blastocyst to sink and get implanted into the uterus. Once implantation has occurred, pregnancy gets initiated. Moreover, after implantation, the inner cells gets differentiated and begin to form the embryo. Embryo formation is thus a complex process that begins with the fertilization and ends with the implantation of the embryo. Now, let us go for the next continued part, that is the embryonic development and parturition. The joys of holding a newborn baby has no bounds. Here, the birth of the baby is an intricate and complex process that begins when the zygote undergoes cleavage and develops into a blastocyst, a hollow ball consisting of a trophoblast, and inner cell mass and a cavity called blastocele. As the trophoblast grows outwards and penetrates the endometrial lining of the uterus, the blastocyst with the developing embryo gets implanted in the uterus and pregnancy is initiated. After implantation, the trophoblast grows further, which causes the blastocyst to sink in the uterus and cover by the uterus. As the blastocyst sinks further into the uterus, finger-like projections called chorionic villi start appearing on the trophoblast. As the chorionic villi grow further, they interlock with the uterine tissue to form the placenta and a structural and functional unit between the developing embryo and maternal body. When the placenta begins to form, the inner cell mass moves downwards and differentiates to form an embryonic disc consisting of 3 germ layers: the outer ectoderm, middle mesoderm, and inner endoderm. The term germ layer indicates that each of the layer gives rise to tissues. The ectoderm, for instance, gives rise to nervous system and the skin, whereas the mesoderm, it develops into the muscles and organs such as heart and kidneys, while the endoderm, it gives rise to the entire digestive system. Did you know that from other than these 3 germ layers, the embryonic disc also contains certain cells called stem cells, which have the ability to give rise to all the tissues and organs present in the human body. As the embryonic disc grows, the cells of the one side of the disc grow faster than those on the other side. This causes the disc to roll and form a cylindrical embryo. Initially, this embryo is attached to the placenta but starts to develop. It moves away from the placenta and remains connected to it by an umbilical cord. The placenta is an important structure that supplies the embryo with oxygen, nutrients, and hormones, as well as carries waste products from the embryo back to mother. The embryo stays inside the uterus for 9 months, which is called the gestation period. During this period, the embryo undergoes several developments. By the end of the first month, the embryo develops in the heart. By the end of the second month, it marks a transition of embryo to a fetus, developing fetal limbs and digits. And by the end of the third month, most of the organs are already formed. Another 4 months and the fetus is rapidly gaining weight and its bones get stronger. By the beginning of the 9th month, the fetus is fully developed. 9th month, it assumes the position it will take during delivery. Interestingly, while the fetus is undergoing several developmental changes, the mother's body too is undergoing several hormonal changes. The ovary, it starts secreting a hormone called relaxin. Likewise, the placenta starts secreting hormones such as human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG and human placental lactogen or HPL. HCG, HPL and relaxin are secreted only when a woman is pregnant. Apart from the secretion of these hormones, the other hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, and thyroxine also rise rapidly in a pregnant woman's body. These hormones support the growth of the fetus as well as maintain the pregnancy. Increased levels of progesterone and estrogen, for instance, put the menstrual cycle on hold and prevents the shedding of the uterine lining, which is embedded with the developing fetus. Hormonal changes also cause the cells of the mother's mammary glands to differentiate, resulting in these glands producing milk by a process called lactation towards the end of the pregnancy. Did you know at the end of the gestation period, the fetus as well as placenta start secreting hormones that set in motion mild uterine contractions called the fetal ejection reflex. These contractions in turn acts on the pituitary gland that now starts secreting oxytocin, a hormone that causes stronger uterine contractions. The simultaneous uterine contractions and oxytocin release makes the contractions stronger with every passing minute and ultimately results in the expulsion of the baby from the mother's uterus. This process of delivery of fetus is called parturition. Immediately after the birth of the baby, the placenta is expelled from the uterus. Soon after birth, the baby needs to be breastfed by the mother as early as possible. This is because immediately after the parturition, the mammary gland starts secreting colostrum, a form of milk that is rich in antibodies and improves the immune system of the baby. Every baby thus begins its journey as a zygote, which develops into the fetus over 9 months. So students, we have completed with this chapter human reproduction. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. So here are the questions related to today's session. What is menopause? There's one more question. Explain implantation. It's 5 marks question. What is placenta? What is parturition? What is lactation? And what is colostrum? Thank you.